So Pat Hall grew up in rural North Georgia with parents who considered a productive garden essential to life. She learned at an early age the importance of growing your own produce and spent many hours in the family garden learning the skills she needed to grow her own. After leaving home, she became a nurse and had her own garden. She soon realized that growing your own produce improves one's health and well-being. Spreading this message to others through community gardening became her mission, and by networking with other local gardeners with the same idea, Mobile Urban Growers was formed and continues to grow. So thanks for joining us, Pat. And Carol is also here today. Carol Dorsey grew up in a farming family in central Alabama where most of their fresh food was produced. Carol developed her love of plants and animals playing and working on the farm. After graduation from Auburn in microbiology, Carol went to work as a public health microbiologist, and nearly 4 decades later, Carol retired as the lab manager. 2 weeks into retirement, Carol entered the Master Gardener Certification Program offered through Alabama Cooperative Extension Service. The program offers many opportunities to learn and serve the community as a volunteer. One of the opportunities is volunteering in the community gardens to put education into practice and grow food for gardeners and the food insecure. So thank you both for joining us today. I know our folks are super excited to hear what you have to say, and I'll switch it over to you two.
Thanks, guys. So now that we've gotten the technical parts over with and we're online, we are excited to have this opportunity. When y'all sent us the emails saying, do y'all want to talk about gardening? It's like, well, we could talk about gardening the rest of the year. So it's our favorite topic. So we're excited that that y'all invited us. And so we prepared a presentation, but we don't have to stay on that presentation. We want to make sure that if y'all have any specific questions, that y'all y'all let us know, and we'll try to address those as we go through. I'll try to keep us on time. I've got my phone here. Let me just apologize in advance. I have my dog next to me, so if she barks, I'll get her restrained a little bit. And I also have a phone that I'm tied to because of work. So let me just apologize in advance for those things. And so the way that we sort of coordinated this is I'm going to give some information, a little bit about gardening and how we do it. And then Carol, who's the master gardener, she's the brains of the operation. She's going to tell you a little bit about what master gardening is all about, and you'll have a chance to ask her some questions because we rely on her so much in all of our gardens. We're fortunate to have that level of expertise that keeps us on track. So I'm going to go to the slides, and so you won't see me for a little bit. So we think gardening is more than just growing fruits and vegetables. We feel that it's growing the person. We all come from the gardens with a lot of different motives. Mine is a place of respite where after a busy day, lots of sick patients that I see in the work that I do, I can go into the garden and relax and enjoy and relieve some stress. It's where I meet God. It's where I see possibilities in growth and in our world and in our environment. So gardening is a medium that we practice, but certainly growth is what the theme is in our gardens. So why do we garden? Because it's good for our physical and mental health. Bottom line, as a nurse, I know the benefits of prevention as opposed to treatment. I take care of patients who have heart disease, and one of the cardiologists I work with said to me a while back, Pat, if you just take all our patients out into the garden, we won't have heart problems. And I truly believe that. I do believe that we can avoid a lot of the health problems, diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, certainly heart and lung disease. we can make an impact if we get out into the garden, expending energy and reaping the benefits of fresh fruit and vegetables. It's the one place where you can combine physical activity with social interaction and be exposed to nature and sunlight. We certainly get a lot of vitamin D when we go out there. There's a lot of research on the benefits of gardening. We know that sunlight actually lowers blood pressure. And like I said, it increases our vitamin D levels. It's required for conversion of vitamin D in our bodies to a usable form. The fruits and vegetables have a positive impact on our diet, and it certainly helps our wallet. If you go to the grocery store and you try to purchase organic vegetables, you know that they're quite expensive, and sometimes I even wonder if that word organic truly is organic in the grocery stores. If you participate in the planting and the growth of fruits and vegetables, you know what goes into that soil. You know what they've been fed. You know what they've been exposed to as they grow. And so you can be assured that what you're gleaning from the garden is healthy and not full of pesticides that we know have a deleterious effect on our health. It improves our dexterity, our hand coordination, our strength. I tell people, you don't really need to go to a gym if you just come out and spend a few hours with us in the garden. We'll get that heart rate up to aerobic levels with shoveling and raking. We'll work on all your fine motor skills and your gross motor skills while you're out there. And we'll make it fun. Instead of just working with a machine, we'll give you some fun things to work with. Secure message. It will, excuse me, I'm going to turn this off for a minute. I told you I was going to get bombarded with calls just as soon as I try to get away from them. All right, so why else do we garden? It helps to control our weight. There are not a lot of obese gardeners. Some of us have a little bit of extra weight here and there as we indulge a little bit more, but you don't see a lot of folks that are grossly overweight in our gardens, and that's because we do stay very active and we eat from our gardens, and what we eat is typically lower in calories. And as I mentioned, it is aerobic exercise. The calorie expenditure with digging and raking and mowing is about 300 calories an hour, which is a pretty good workout for us. Plus, it's free. You don't have to pay gym fees. You don't have to get in your car and drive or walk to a gym. You can do it at any of the community gardening locations we have all around town. Gardening boosts our immune system. We are less prone to developing or being susceptible to bacteria and viruses. Now that COVID is a part of our lives, we can maintain social distancing in our garden. It nourishes our spirit. Being outside lifts our spirit and helps relieve our stress. My mental attitude changes the minute I go into the garden. We can interact with one another. It counteracts social isolation, and particularly in the area of dementia, we know that individuals who are socially isolated are at greater risk for dementia. So it sharpens our brain, it prevents the dementia that in our society, and it builds our self-esteem. There's nothing better or makes you feel better than to see one of these little seeds that you put in the ground come alive, and it makes something. It's just incredible how amazing it can be, planting these things and seeing them grow and mature. Climate change, it helps slows our climate change. It sucks out the carbon emissions. It purifies our air, it gives us oxygen, and it gives us hope for the future. So all these benefits, I could go on, but these are some of the big ones. Anything else about gardening? We can use gardening, the skills that we use, that we're learning and we're applying in other employment opportunities. Farming. Many individuals do farming, and we do a combination of both gardening and farming. The I guess we could explore the definitions of those two, but farming to me is on a large scale, whereas gardening is on a smaller scale. So you could be a farmer. You could be a specialty gardener. Some of our friends are growing herbs. We know a woman locally who grows turmeric and makes a nice income selling her turmeric to health food stores. Landscaping is another opportunity. Being an arborist, working with trees. We met an arborist recently who he tends trees, and it was an interesting. His philosophy was that when he cuts down a tree, he grinds it up and he uses the parts of the tree in other ways so that that tree is useful even after it's taken out of its current location. Nursery and greenhouse science is an area that's growing. We do, in some of our gardening locations, we've got hoop tunnels, we've got small greenhouses where we could start seedlings early, and so that they're ready for planting when spring comes. Lawn and turf, we don't do a lot of lawn and turf work, but certainly some of the skills that you're learning could be applied in that area. There are many, many other opportunities we can go on. But again, all the skills that are related to those horticultural and agricultural disciplines come out of some of the things that we're developing on a grassroots local level. So master gardeners, that is an area that's growing and is a resource for our community. The master gardeners support our gardens and our gardeners. So I've talked for a few minutes. I'm going to let Carol tell about her experiences as a master gardener and the things that she does in her practice as master gardener. So take it away, Carol.
Thanks, Pat. So you'll see in this slide American Gothic of a master gardener working with an Alta Point intellectual disabled wonderful fellow, and we are trying to expand our interest, footprint, inclusion with all kinds of gardeners in the city. And there are a lot of master gardeners out in the county as well. The center photo shows John Dalen, who went through master gardener training after I did, and it has Jack LeCroy in it, who is the current master gardener supervisor. It has Larissa in it, and our own Pat Hall. And we're not afraid to get our hands dirty. So that is what we're doing. Composting leaves in the far right photograph. Pat, do you advance or do I advance?
I can advance. Yep.
Yes.
Just tell me. There we go.
Okay, so Master Gardener program started in the Pacific Northwest in 1973 when the Cooperative Extension Service, which is in all the states and territories for the United States, they were just overwhelmed with questions. And so it was one person and a whole bunch of territory to cover. So in about 1991, Alabama Cooperative Extension Service launched the Alabama Master Gardener Program, and it is 16 weeks. I think I've got another slide that details this a little bit, but what we do is on a weekly basis, meeting for about 5 hours on one day during the week, we cover botany, we cover native plants, we cover soil, and so let's flip that back and let's see what else is on that.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have duties at the Cooperative Extension Service, though COVID situation has changed that to take calls on your personal phone. But there are frequently times when we are in the office in 2 to 4 hour stints taking calls from usually it's not all over the state, it's pretty much half of the state. And that can be from 1 call in a 2-hour period to 5 calls in a 2-hour period, which really challenges us to know what's a frequently asked question, and if we don't know it, to be able to do a quick resourcing of solutions, and then ultimately turn it over to an extension agent after we have whittled down the stuff that we can handle. We also try to serve as guidance and education and helping hands for community gardens, and there's also an element of nutrition to this, so we can advance, please.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so yeah, this is community outreach at Airbus manufacturing facility, where we establish connections with their environmental services folks, and we get from 150 to 300 pounds of spent coffee grounds, which are turned into supplements and amendments for our soil after composting. And it's been an interesting partnership. And the practices of people know that little creamer cup is not compostable. Yes, you're purchasing compostable cups, good for you, so that we can use those in our gardens. You can go ahead, please. So the requirements for a Master Gardener are, first, 5. But to understand what you're getting into, it's 16 weeks of training. These classes are on Wednesdays during the daytime, but if there is enough groundswell for additional class times for folks that are working through the day and can't, manage their hours, then we could do it another way. I know there are some requests, they have not been sufficient to act on. And so about 5 hours on a Wednesday, and that starts mid-August, and it goes through November. And to be certified, you have to have 50 volunteer hours. Plants.
Uh-oh.
You okay?
You cut out for a minute, Carol.
All right, so we have 5 hours of working in the Dream Garden. Am I caught up?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then the remainder is in the, there's a Master Gardener tent at Market in the Square and at Botanical Gardens plant sales. We help with the plant sales in field work for educating and guiding people to the right plant for the right place. We can do consulting in home gardens and gardening in community gardens, which is where I met Pat. The deadline for that application is on the Mobile County mastergardeners.org website, and the deadline's the 5th. All right, so Pat, back to you.
Okay, good. So I can't stress enough how valuable the Master Gardeners are. And I snuck in that slide that Carol showed Carol working with Airbus. That project has been so meaningful to our community gardens. And the other project that Carol did not mention that she spearheaded was working with our mounted police and Keep Mobile Beautiful on a project for composting. We'll talk a little bit about that with soil and the importance of composting, but that was a huge project that with her microbiology expertise and her Master Gardener expertise has been a great project for our gardens to be involved with. And again, without that Master Gardener support, we would not have been able to reap those benefits. So moving on to what do we need to know to be able to garden? Most of our gardening education occurs one-on-one in the garden. We don't. We do some formal presentations like we're doing today, but most of what we do is just here, come garden with us. We can learn from you as well as you learn from us, and it's a shared experience, and we all grow and learn together. But we've pretty much honed down that what the garden needs are 5 things, and that is good soil, sunlight, seeds, water, and care. So that's what we teach people. And when we're teaching the children, we tell them to hold up their hands. You know, one is what we give to the garden, and that is these 5 things. And we have them count through their fingers: soil, sun, seeds, water, and care. And then they hold up their other hand, and we say, what does the garden give us? And it gives us fruit, vegetables, grains, fun, and friendship. So that is the basic lesson that we teach every time we go into the garden. So let's explore those a little bit further. And so soil is where our garden lives. It's the foundation of the garden. It's complex. If you look at that photo or that diagram at the bottom of the picture, and by the way, that beautiful piece of artwork was done by Harold's son. He's a wonderful artist, and he created that for us. But it just shows how dynamic soil is. You know, we sometimes use the word dirt, and dirt just really doesn't describe how complex and how wonderful soil is. It's made up of 5 things. It's minerals, water, air, organic matter, and living organisms. And it is the surface of our earth, and it's without it, plants could not live. So it's what creates our forests and our gardens and all the things that are on the surface of the earth. There are 3 types of minerals in soil, 3 classes based on size, and they are clay, silt, and sand. Clay being the more dense, and sand being the less dense of the minerals. And good soil really is composed of a little bit of all of those. Growing up in North Georgia with red clay, our goal was to modify that soil by adding some of the other components to it. So good soil is made up of all of that. What is organic matter? Organic was previously living, and it's plant, animal, and microbial residues in various states of decomposition. Of course, the organisms within our soil break all of that down, and when we have all of those components together, that determines a good soil quality. So besides supporting plant growth, soil also provides a system for recycling nutrients and organic waste. It's a habitat for organisms. It's a system by which our water supply circulates and purifies, and it provides a medium for building. Builders need a good solid foundation upon which to erect houses and other buildings. So it's an important part not only of our garden, but of the creation of our cities and our towns and our neighborhoods. So looking a little bit further, clay, sand, and soil and silt. These are just to give you an idea of the mineral composition of soil and a little bit about what it might look like. So sun, so that's dirt, that's soil. Let me back up just a little bit. I'm going to go back to this slide. This is the backyard of one of our gardeners, and he's taken all of those leaves, and for us, we develop soil from primarily from leaves. We allow it to decompose. We'll add other things to it. Typically, a good mixture of brown and green in an 8-to-1 ratio will yield a breakdown within a few months of some really nice looking soil. We have one of our gardeners has an operation at Central Presbyterian Garden where he creates windrows, and he turns those rows every week or so, allowing them to decompose with the water and the turning to make this really rich, good organic soil. And believe me, it grows just about anything you could. Sometimes we'll throw some kitchen leftovers in there, and if there are any seeds at all, they'll jump up. We have some nice volunteer tomatoes and cucumbers that come out of our compost piles that are better than anything that we plant intentionally in our gardens. All right, so sun, I know you've probably studied the whole process of photosynthesis, how the plants use the energy from the sun to create food that the plant uses to make fruits and vegetables. Full sun is what we consider 6 to 8 hours a day, and summer daylight hours are used to select some of our plant cultivars. In Mobile, we have fairly intense sun, but it's rather short days, whereas if you've ever been up north to Alaska, it rarely gets dark up there during the summer. But certainly to be successful gardening, it's important that you select your placement of plants in the amount of sun that they need. Certainly some plants do not need full intense sun, and others do need it. And to be successful, you do need to take that into consideration. So seeds. Seeds are, Carol has a saying about what is a seed. It's a baby in a, Carol, tell me that jingle again.
A baby in a box with a lunch.
So that's a good description of seeds, but most of our fruits, vegetables, and flowers come from seeds. Seeds have different growing styles that they may germinate better in cool temperatures or in some in warm temperatures. We can enhance the growth of our or the germination of our seeds sometime by soaking them or by nicking them. We've been trying to grow some peppers and husk tomatoes, and it's amazing how diverse these seeds are as far as their needs and their style of growth. The more you understand how what the needs of that seed are, the more successful you will be in growing the plants from seeds. They have different storage and cultivation needs. I recently ran across a diagram, a text that included how long you could store the various seeds. Corn, for example, you could only store for about a year, whereas some of your beans and other hardy plants, you can store those for up to 3 to 5 years. there are some methods, and Carol has been using some methods to determine the viability of some seeds that we've had. And there are some methods that she recently shared on our Facebook page. When you come across a seed packet and go, is this still good or not? Do you want to waste your time planting it and then be disappointed? And there's some techniques you can use prior to that to determine the viability of your seeds. So we study our seeds, we consider what the seed needs are, and we plant them accordingly. The greatest resource for how to plant seeds is the packet that they come in. If you look on the back of the packet, it'll tell you when to plant them, where to plant them, how to plant them. All of that information is useful for us, regardless of where you live or where you're planting them. So I encourage you to use that as a resource. All right, so moving on to water. Oh my goodness, water is so important in our gardens. The very first community garden I started at the Beehive, which is on Government Street, we started without a water source. I was loading up the back of my car with gallon jugs of water and carrying them down there and hand watering that garden for the first several months until we started getting adequate rains. Just when you need the water, the rains stop. We usually plant our gardens beginning in March, and sure enough, when April rolls around and the weather becomes pretty, it just doesn't rain for weeks and weeks. And here we planted our gardens, and those plants are in need of water. So we have other sources for water. What you see on the slide here are rain barrels. We have them in several of our gardens. They are good supplements. They do require a little bit of work, a little bit of ingenuity. But good old garden hoses. One of our gardens, we actually dug a well, and we have a hand pump that sometimes we use. We've put in irrigation lines in some of our gardens. So lots of different water sources. We even considered some of the fire hydrants as a source for water at one point when we were low on water. But anytime you're deciding on where to plant your garden, make sure that you determine where your water is going to come from, how far away it is, and what you're going to need to do to get it there. Whereas water is great, too much water may not be great. So there are some golden rules I wanted to share with you about watering. Watering, obviously we want to maintain a good soil moisture. Too little, too much is not a good thing. Some people get out and water every day just a little bit, and that's really not what we should be doing. I try to water at least once a week, but I water thoroughly, and I check the soil when I water to make sure I stick my finger in it, make sure that that water is penetrating the soil and getting to the roots. And so water often really is the key here. Watering in late evening or early morning, and I would say really it's better to water early in the morning. Sometimes if you water in the evening, there is an opportunity for growth of bacteria and fungi and other things that plants don't like. And keeping the leaves dry to avoid diseases. We mulch a lot with leaves and allowing them to dry. And again, by watering in the morning, they will dry as the sun begins to come up. Ensure that it reaches the roots, and again, the finger test is a way to do that. You want to have at least an inch or two penetration of the water. Apply gradually and allow the water to penetrate and avoid runoff. Water evenly around the plant for a balanced, well-developed root system. So don't want water on one place and not on the other. Get it around, and preferably at the base of the plant as opposed to on the leaves, where again diseases can develop. Water-saving irrigation methods. One of our gardens, we did put in an irrigation line. It's a little bit more, but if you use just city water, you're going to be paying more than if you put in an irrigation line. It's just a separate meter that the water department can put in, and it's real cheap water. You have an initial expense, but it's cheap if you're going to be irrigating and using quite a bit of water. Avoid waterlogging for obvious reasons. It can rot the roots, plants themselves, and use quality water for better water retention. I like rainwater myself. If I have a rain barrel, I can dip my watering can in. I can tell you the plants like that better than city water that's been chlorinated. Understanding the water cycle. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail about this, but the water cycle is important ecologically. In the area where we live, we get an abundance of water. Some of the other areas of the country, this water cycle is quite different. So your location will certainly affect your the amount of water that you get, and that is taken into consideration as well. So gardening, farming, it takes all kinds. In our experience, in the gardens that we work with city properties. Taylor Park is a city park that the city owns. It's managed by a local group, and we have the opportunity to have a community garden on that site. We have several church gardens, schools gardens. There are urban farms locally that we work with, private properties that work with us, nonprofits, for-profits, donation gardens, market gardens, therapy gardens, backyard gardens, guerrilla gardens, if you're not familiar with that term. Carol and I consider ourselves guerrilla gardens in that we're going around starting gardens in just about any place we can. But there is, if you Google guerrilla gardener, there's a gentleman that goes around planting seeds everywhere. I guess he's sort of like Johnny Appleseed in the gardening world. The last thing as far as plants needing is care. And our day-to-day activities of weeding, mulching, fertilizing, harvesting, sharing, and most important, enjoying ourselves. Our community gardens, there are a lot of different ways that they can be structured and run. All of our gardens are open gardens. They are available first to our gardeners, and then anyone that comes and wants to pick or enjoy the fresh fruits and vegetables from our garden, we welcome them. We only ask that they pick when it's ready, that they not damage the plant, and that they enjoy it or share with others as needed. Whatever is left over in our gardens, we share with our food pantries and those in need. And we do quite a bit of that. As a matter of fact, our food pantries really appreciate receiving fresh fruits and vegetables. One resource that I want to tell you about that can make successful gardening for you is a publication by Bill Finch, who at one point was the garden editor for the Press Register here in Mobile. He published this in the Press Register, and it's available online, but it's called the Plain Garden Planting Cycle. And if you follow this guideline, you'll be fairly successful. It's very specific to gardening along the Gulf Coast. If you look at each month on here, so for example, we're into June, and if you look at what we should be doing here in June, we should be, it's small, so I'm going to try to look, we should be preparing our beds right now already for fall planting. We should be solarizing our soil. in the brown, we should be sowing eggplant and other vegetables. And then there are some peppers, sweet potato starts that can be going in right now. And then if you follow the orange, we can continue sowing okra and other things until mid-August that's listed there. So again, follow that along, and for the most part, you'll be successful. But that's a good gardening resource for us here locally. So Mobile Urban Growers, I want to put a plug in for our group. We were organized in 2014. We started out with just a few of us who were mentoring one another. We'd meet periodically either in our gardens or at a local coffee shop and talk about things. We would share plants and seeds and volunteers and things with one another. And pretty soon it became apparent that that if we organized ourselves, that we would grow stronger and have more resources. So we did. We organized ourselves. We called ourselves Mobile Urban Growers, or MUG for short, and we are devoted to cultivating community gardens in the Mobile area. We support one another. We share our resources. We nurture individual gardens and their development, and we spread the garden gospel around Mobile. We love gardening, and we think everybody else, if given the opportunity, should have as much fun as we do when we're out gardening. Beside gardening, we mentor, we offer seminars from time to time, we give community presentations, we help with garden planning. As Carol mentioned, we help out with our own backyard gardens. We spend a lot of time with children. And these are the children, some of the children at Taylor Park that we go and spend an hour with once a week, and they don't have a playground, so they come out to the garden, and the garden is their playground. And we believe that if you start early, that your health, you can set in motion some healthy eating habits and activity in your life that ultimately will have an impact long term on your health. As a heart nurse, this is something I truly believe. These are the kids of our future. You're the kids of our future. You are our future. You're becoming young men and young women who will be leading us into the next several decades. And gardening is a way of learning how to live a healthy, productive life. If you notice, these kids are holding up greens. They're turnip greens and collard greens and kale. People tell me all the time, oh, kids that won't eat greens, they won't eat kale, they won't eat collards. Well, these kids eat just about anything that comes out of that garden, and that's what you see them with here. They beg for the fresh produce that comes out of that garden. And so we consider this a real success if we can show them how to enjoy the fruits of our labor in the garden. So with that, we're going to open this up to questions. We want to say thank you. Find us on Facebook. Find us on our web page. Find us in the gardens around Mobile on any given Saturday or Sunday, or in the days in between. You'll find us out getting dirty in our gardens and having a gay old time with growing and planting and gardening. So I've talked long enough, and our time is coming to a close soon, but we still have time for questions. I'm going to ask Carol, what have I left out? Is there anything I should have talked about or didn't? Or
no, I think you covered it very well, and let's go on to some questions because I see some things popping up. So are y'all asking us?
I'm sorry, I'm Deanna. Thank you guys for coming, and I'll be reading the questions for you. They'll just be popping up and asking their individual ones. So to start off, Haley, do you want to start with your question about pulling weeds?
Yes, I will. Just let me find it. Okay. So, are you supposed to pull weeds and manage that daily? And my other question was, are there any natural ways to keep insects off of your like leaves and your plants without like harmful pesticides and whatnot?
Well, I'll take this. Some of our study, not just Master Gardener, if there's a continuing education program and I can get to it, I'll do it. We have to, there's another resource I'd like for y'all to check into if you want to further your interest in this, Kiss the Ground. And one of the tenets of that building soil as a carbon sequestration element is ground wants to be covered. And so if you go in and just annihilate every living thing that isn't that eggplant that you want, you may not be doing the best thing. Now, as you garden for a while, you'll see that there is a cyclical nature. Like these little clover looking things with little tiny pink flowers come up when the weather cools off. Well, that's oxalis. It isn't a problem. Dandelions, they have a deep taproot and they bring up nutrients from a deeper layer in the soil than some of your more surface grown plants. So about weeds, that's why we mulch, to try to limit that. If you have an invasion of grasses in a cultivated area, then you're going to have to be persistent. I don't think you have to do it every day, but certainly be mindful every week of what's coming on and is it bad. Does that answer your question? Oh, and the natural treatment for
It does.
pests. Well, if a pest identifies your vegetable crop or your fruit crop as food for it to perpetuate itself, it's going to go for it. There is a practice called integrated pest management, and much of what I'm saying is available in the form of publications through Alabama Cooperative Extension Service. And if you go to that website and you type in gardening or caterpillars on tomatoes, then you'll see specific treatments. Mobile Urban Growers prefers an organic approach, which integrates identifying the pest, see if it is bad enough to do something about it, because you're really getting some actual destruction, not just a little bit of damage. Use the least use organic practices to get rid of it. That is, we use BT, which is a natural bacterium selected for killing caterpillars. We use neem oil, we use a horticultural oil, and we use insecticidal soaps. Note, I did not say mix some Dawn dishwashing liquid in water. When that breaks down, it can cause burns on the leaves in the sunshine, whereas an actual insecticidal soap won't do that. So, and then last but not least, and that's probably not going to be a case in a community garden or a backyard garden, you pull out the big guns of carbaryl and permethrins and stuff like that. So we try to scout and see what the problem is, and then treat with the least problematic methods. There's another thing. You can companion plant, which reduces some of the natural pests like these microscopic worms in the soil called nematodes, and French marigolds interplanted with your okra, which is kind of susceptible to nematodes, as well as tomatoes. So it's a beautiful and interesting practice.
And also rotation. If you practice rotating what you plant from place to place, you'll make sure that you can avoid some of those as well. Good question.
Thank you, guys. Cody, you had a really good question too about the mushrooms, and
Okay, thank
you
you.
want to go ahead and
What was that flower you said?
I think it was galang, Haley. It was a French marigold was the flower that she said to me.
Right.
Cody, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes. Would it be beneficial to allow or even introduce mushrooms to garden soil, since fungi can help with turning not so ideal sandy soil into loamy soil over time? And if so, would it be if it would be beneficial, do you have any recommendations as to what species I could add that would thrive in an open garden type environment?
If you put the food there, the mushrooms will find it. I went to a workshop in Baldwin County by a company in Dadeville, which is outside of Auburn, called the Fungi Farm. And they have spores and such as that, but the basic function of fungi is to decompose organic material. But if you had a shiitake, which would rather live on a log and infiltrate with the mycelia on the log, then it wouldn't be happy in your soil. But I think that if you have the right place, and fungi don't want to be disturbed, so it'd have to be in an area where you're not turning over the soil, where you don't if you're turning over, if you're doing plantings, then that could interfere with the mycorrhizae that are in the soil. The microscopic fungi are going to be present if you have a good, a well-developed, healthy soil. So go to Fungi Farm, and they have the plugs. They have 5-pound, like if the mushrooms like growing in sawdust, then they have 5-pound things that are already inoculated. So check them out. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we also had a really good question from Austin about alternative gardening methods. I'm going to go ahead and ask that one.
By alternative gardening, I'm wondering, are you speaking of aquaponics and hydroponics? Tell me a little bit about what you're envisioning.
I was just trying to say alternative is like a very loose terming. Obviously, like I've heard about lasagna or Back to Eden is growing a lot in popularity.
Yes. So lasagna gardening is pretty much how most of the community gardens started out. It is the practice of building up your soil with lots of different organic materials. And you may recall in one of our slides there was plastic that was on the ground. That is a particular form of in-ground planting called plastic cropping, plastic culture. And there's a particular machine with sheets of black plastic that reduce the weeds. So that is a little bit of an alternative. And then we've had some training and really some interest in hydroponics and aquaponics. That takes a lot of resources to spin up at some sort of level that we feel like we could do that. For piddling around at